Listen and practice. Leo often felt a pang of frustration whenever he tried to speak English. He understood grammar rules perfectly, could write essays with ease, and read complex texts without much difficulty. However, when it came to actual conversation, his words would often stumble, his mind would race, and confidence would simply evaporate. This feeling was a constant barrier to his ambition of global communication and travel, leaving him feeling isolated in an increasingly connected world. For years, Leo relied heavily on textbooks and online lessons, meticulously memorizing vocabulary lists and verb conjugations. He believed that accumulating knowledge was the sole way of learning English effectively. He spent countless hours poring over grammar exercises, convinced that mastery of rules would naturally translate into fluent speech. Yet, the gap between knowing about English and using it remained stubbornly wide, a chasm he struggled to bridge. One evening, while watching an interview with a polyglot, a new concept resonated deeply: listen and practice. The expert emphasized that true fluency wasn't just about speaking, but profoundly about listening. This was a revelation for Leo, who had always prioritized output over input. He realized he needed to attune his ears to the rhythm, intonation, and natural flow of spoken English, not just its isolated words or phrases. He began to transform his daily routine, consciously incorporating more English audio. Podcasts, documentaries, and even casual conversations became his new learning tools. He didn't just passively hear, he actively listened, trying to decipher nuances, accents, and emotional tones. This deliberate engagement with spoken language started to unlock a different part of his brain, slowly demystifying the art of authentic communication. Leo then moved to the practice phase, attempting to mimic what he heard. He would pause recordings and repeat phrases, focusing on pronunciation and intonation. This was how to talk in English, he realized, by imitating the masters. It felt awkward at first, a bit like acting, but the more he practiced, the more natural the sounds became. His tongue and lips started forming shapes they hadn't before, gradually reducing his foreign accent. He started paying close attention to how other people talk in English in various contexts. He observed their body language, their pauses, their ways of expressing doubt or enthusiasm. It wasn't just about the words, it was about the entire communicative package. He noticed how people used filler words naturally, how they corrected themselves, and how they maintained conversational flow, even with minor stumbles. Leo had a particular fondness for British English, admiring its distinct phonetics and often polite phrasing. He decided to dive deeper into this specific dialect. "Let's talk in British English" became his new mantra. He immersed himself in BBC radio dramas, British films, and even tried to imitate specific regional accents, finding it both challenging and incredibly rewarding for his linguistic development. He realized that how to speak with people involved more than just grammar, it was about social cues and conversational dynamics. It was about knowing when to interrupt politely, how to ask clarifying questions, and how to keep the conversation flowing naturally. He learned that a good conversationalist isn't just someone who speaks well, but someone who listens and responds thoughtfully, building connection. Observing how people speak English in different social settings taught him the importance of context. Formal speeches differed greatly from casual chats with friends. He noticed the varying vocabulary, sentence structures, and even speeds of delivery. This insight helped him tailor his own communication style, understanding that adaptability was a key component of effective English speaking. His first attempts at speaking with native speakers were nerve-wracking. He'd feel his heart pound, his palms sweat, and his mind go blank. Despite all the listening and mimicking, the pressure of real-time interaction was immense. He often left these conversations feeling discouraged, convinced he hadn't made any significant progress, almost abandoning his goal entirely due to fear. However, a small voice inside him urged him to persist. He reminded himself that mistakes were part of the learning process. He started viewing each awkward interaction not as a failure, but as a practice session. This shift in mindset was crucial, allowing him to step outside his comfort zone more frequently, embracing the imperfections as stepping stones toward eventual fluency and confidence. To gain more practice, Leo joined several online language exchange groups. This provided a safe space to try out his newfound listening and speaking techniques. He started with text-based chats, then moved to voice messages, and finally to live video calls. The gradual progression helped him build confidence, allowing him to communicate without the immediate pressure of face-to-face interaction. One memorable day, he found himself chatting with a native speaker from London about his favorite football team. The conversation flowed naturally, with laughter and shared opinions, without him constantly translating in his head. This impromptu success was a significant turning point, a powerful moment when he truly felt like he was talking in English rather than merely reciting learned phrases. It was a very interesting story for him, witnessing firsthand how consistent exposure and courageous practice led to natural language acquisition. He understood that fluency wasn't about perfect grammar from the start, but about building muscle memory for sounds and patterns. The brain, he discovered, was a remarkable organ, capable of profound adaptation and growth. He started telling his own stories in English, even if they were simple at first. He found that narrative helped him connect ideas, use a wider range of vocabulary, and engage his listeners. Storytelling wasn't just entertaining, it was a powerful way to practice structuring thoughts and expressing emotions in a foreign tongue, making the learning process more dynamic and enjoyable. Leo found that British comedies, with their rapid-fire dialogue and cultural nuances, were surprisingly beneficial. They weren't just entertaining, they provided rich context for colloquialisms and typical conversational patterns. He laughed, he learned, and without realizing it, he absorbed more about natural English interaction than any textbook could ever teach him, finding joy in the process. He learned to appreciate that, how people speak English varies greatly in pace. Some speak quickly, others more slowly. He practiced adjusting his own listening speed, training his ear to pick up words even in rapid speech. This adaptability was crucial, allowing him to follow diverse conversations without constantly feeling overwhelmed or needing frequent repetitions from the speaker. Intonation and rhythm, he discovered, were vital. They conveyed meaning and emotion that words alone could not. He practiced mimicking the rising and falling tones, the stress on certain syllables, to sound more natural and express himself accurately. This nuanced understanding helped him avoid sounding robotic and allowed his personality to shine through in his spoken English. To combat self-doubt, Leo started incorporating daily affirmations and self-talk in English. He would describe his day, his feelings, and his plans to himself, even when alone. This consistent internal dialogue helped solidify new vocabulary and grammar patterns, making them feel more intuitive and less like something he had to consciously retrieve from memory banks. Eventually, he found a dedicated conversation partner, a patient British native speaker named Eleanor, through an online platform. Their weekly video calls became invaluable. Eleanor offered gentle corrections, explained cultural references, and provided constant encouragement. This sustained, one-on-one interaction significantly accelerated his progress and boosted his confidence levels. One challenge was navigating awkward silences. He learned that it was okay to pause, to think, and even to say, or, occasionally, just like native speakers do. He no longer felt the pressure to fill every gap with words, allowing himself space to formulate his thoughts more coherently, making his conversations feel less forced and more authentic. As he delved deeper into "Let's Talk in British English," he discovered the incredible diversity of accents within the UK. From the refined tones of received pronunciation to the melodic lilt of Scottish English or the sharp sounds of Cockney, each presented a new listening challenge. This broadened his understanding and appreciation of regional variations, making him a more versatile listener. He focused on practicing common conversational phrases, not just individual words. Expressions like "how's it going," "you know what I mean," or "fair enough," became part of his active vocabulary. These phrases, often overlooked in formal textbooks, were essential for sounding natural and connecting with speakers on a more informal, spontaneous level, bridging social gaps. Then came the realization of why reading is important. While listening built his ear for rhythm and speech patterns, reading was fundamental for expanding his vocabulary and understanding complex sentence structures. He started reading British novels, news articles, and even blogs, actively looking up unknown words and phrases to enrich his mental lexicon significantly. Reading wasn't just about vocabulary, it was about nuance. Novels taught him subtle ways of expressing emotions, character motivations, and intricate plot developments. This deepened his comprehension of the language beyond superficial understanding, allowing him to grasp implied meanings and cultural references that he might have otherwise missed in spoken conversations, enhancing empathy. He made a conscious effort to read diverse genres, from historical fiction to contemporary thrillers, from scientific articles to poetry. Each genre introduced him to specialized vocabulary and distinct writing styles, further broadening his linguistic horizons. This comprehensive approach to reading ensured that his understanding of English was well-rounded and robust across various domains. Leo observed a powerful synergy between reading and speaking. The more he read, the richer his vocabulary became, which in turn gave him more words to express himself during conversations. Reading also exposed him to correct grammar in context, reinforcing rules without conscious effort, making his spoken English more accurate and naturally fluid. He actively tried to apply newly learned words from his reading into his conversations. This active recall and application solidified the vocabulary in his memory. It was a challenging but rewarding practice, forcing him to integrate new knowledge into his spontaneous speech, transforming passive recognition into active production of language. One very interesting story he read was about a character's journey of self-discovery through learning a new language. This resonated deeply with Leo, mirroring his own struggles and triumphs. The character's perseverance inspired him, reminding him that the path to fluency was not linear but a series of small, consistent efforts, full of unexpected breakthroughs. His observations on how other people talk in English began to extend beyond mere linguistics into cultural context. He noticed how British people used humor, sarcasm, and understatement, which were often subtle and easily missed by non-natives. Understanding these cultural nuances became as important as understanding the words themselves for truly effective communication. He made a point of learning common British colloquialisms and idioms. Phrases like "spill the beans," "take the mickey," or "chin up" became fascinating insights into the everyday language. These expressions, while sometimes challenging to grasp, added authenticity to his speech and helped him connect more deeply with native speakers, showcasing a deeper understanding. Perhaps one of the most rewarding aspects was the ability to finally understand British humor. Their dry wit, self-deprecating jokes, and often absurd scenarios had previously sailed over his head. Now, he found himself genuinely laughing along, a clear sign that his cultural and linguistic comprehension had reached a new, more profound level of integration. His growing confidence meant he was no longer waiting to be spoken to. He started initiating conversations, whether with strangers in online forums or with English-speaking tourists he encountered in his city. This proactive approach was a huge leap from his earlier shyness, demonstrating a significant psychological shift in his journey towards fluency. Leo also learned about fossilized errors, mistakes that become ingrained if not corrected early. He sought feedback from Eleanor and other native speakers, actively asking them to correct his pronunciation or grammar. This willingness to be corrected, rather than fearing it, ensured that his progress was continuous and his errors did not become permanent fixtures. To further immerse himself, he started practicing thinking in English. Instead of translating thoughts from his native language, he tried to formulate them directly in English. This internal monologue, though difficult at first, gradually reduced the mental effort required for speaking, making conversations feel more spontaneous and less like a complex translation exercise. For Leo, the way of learning English ceased being a mere academic pursuit and transformed into a lifestyle. English was now integrated into his daily activities, from listening to music to reading news, from watching films to chatting with friends. It was no longer a chore but an enjoyable part of his everyday existence, making progress feel effortless. He understood that fluency was a continuous journey, not a final destination. There would always be new words to learn, new nuances to grasp, and new cultural contexts to understand. This realization freed him from the pressure of perfection, allowing him to enjoy the ongoing process of exploration and discovery within the English language. Leo realized that consistency was far more important than intensity. Short, regular practice sessions, whether listening for 15 minutes or having a 20-minute chat, yielded better long-term results than occasional marathon study sessions. This disciplined approach, though seemingly small, compounded over time to create significant improvements in his English abilities. He started noticing how native speakers used discourse markers naturally, words like, well, you know, like, I mean, so, right. These seemingly insignificant words played a crucial role in structuring conversation and making speech sound authentic. Incorporating them into his own dialogue helped him sound less academic and more genuinely conversational, bridging the gap. Podcasts and audiobooks became indispensable tools. They allowed him to practice, listen and practice, while commuting or doing chores. He could choose topics that genuinely interested him, making the learning process engaging and relevant. The sheer volume of accessible audio content provided limitless opportunities for immersion and ear training, a true gift. How to speak with people also involved building rapport. He learned to ask open-ended questions, show genuine interest in others' responses, and share personal anecdotes appropriately. These social skills, combined with his improving English, allowed him to form deeper connections and enjoy conversations beyond mere information exchange, fostering true communication. A peculiar but fascinating aspect of "let's talk in British English" was the prevalent use of understatement. Saying "not bad" when something was excellent, or "a bit tricky" when it was incredibly difficult, was a common linguistic habit. Understanding this cultural quirk was essential to correctly interpret tone and meaning in everyday British conversations. Reading British literature, especially classics, provided immense cultural insight. Authors like Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, and George Orwell offered windows into different historical periods and societal norms, enriching his understanding of the British psyche. This background knowledge made conversations about history, society, or even current events more meaningful and informed. He continued to marvel at how other people talk in English across different regions of the UK. A quick trip to Scotland revealed vastly different pronunciations and slang compared to London. This exposure to linguistic diversity made him a more adaptable listener, less flustered by unfamiliar accents, and more confident in understanding global English. Leo prioritized authentic materials over simplified textbooks. Real-world conversations, unscripted interviews, and genuine written articles provided a more accurate representation of the language as it was actually used. This raw exposure, though challenging initially, ultimately accelerated his understanding of natural patterns and common expressions in context. He consciously used storytelling as a way to practice fluency and coherence. By recounting daily events, funny anecdotes, or recent experiences, he forced himself to string together sentences, use various tenses, and develop a narrative flow. This active recall and structuring of thought significantly improved his conversational abilities. Why reading is important extended to exposure to complex grammatical structures that might not frequently appear in everyday conversation. Reading literary works or academic texts exposed him to sophisticated sentence constructions, which, over time, subtly enhanced his own writing and occasionally influenced his more formal spoken English, adding depth. He found that humor, even when self-deprecating or slightly awkward, was a powerful tool in bridging cultural gaps. Being able to appreciate and even attempt British humor helped him connect on a more personal level with native speakers, making interactions less formal and more genuinely enjoyable, fostering deeper bonds. Mastering polite expressions was another key component of how to talk in English, especially in a British context. Phrases like please, thank you, excuse me, I'm sorry, and nuanced apologies or requests became second nature. These small words significantly impacted how he was perceived by native speakers, making him sound more respectful and integrated. It was a very interesting story, indeed, witnessing his own transformation. From a hesitant speaker to a confident conversationalist, Leo had journeyed far. His initial fear had given way to a quiet self-assurance, proving that dedication, smart strategies, and a willingness to embrace the learning process could truly unlock linguistic potential. Learning English became less about reaching an end goal and more about continuous improvement. He now embraced the idea that language learning was a lifelong pursuit, filled with ongoing discovery. This mindset alleviated pressure and made the entire experience more enjoyable, fostering a true love for the language. He found himself appreciating how people speak English, with their diverse accents, no longer seeing them as barriers but as beautiful variations of a shared language. Each accent told a story of origin, culture, and identity, enriching his listening experience and making him a truly global communicator. The ultimate satisfaction came from clear, effortless communication. No longer battling with words or struggling to convey his thoughts, Leo could now express himself authentically and understand others without strain. This newfound freedom in expression was profoundly liberating, opening up countless personal and professional opportunities. Now, Leo often shared his way of learning English with others, encouraging them to listen actively, practice fearlessly, and read widely. He emphasized that the journey was unique for everyone, but persistence and an open mind were universal keys to success, inspiring many with his personal tale of triumph. His journey had not only improved his English but also opened up a whole new chapter of global connection. He had made friends from different countries, understood diverse perspectives, and felt truly part of a global community, all thanks to his dedication to learn English and bravely speaking up.